General Hospital spoilers for Friday, January 30th. Predict the power was out at the castle and darkness pressed in from every corridor when the confrontation finally exploded into motion. Footsteps echoed where no one was supposed to be and breath caught in throats as shadows crossed paths. Someone grabbed for a weapon that was not there. Another voice whispered a name that should never have been spoken aloud. In that single moment secrets collided, and every reckless choice made in the past weeks surged together inside the cold stone walls. Whatever was about to happen here would ripple outward and change everything. The night had been building toward chaos long before anyone reached the castle. Hours earlier, Drew's house sat unnervingly quiet with its front door standing slightly open, as if inviting trouble. Drew and Willow were both at the hospital, which made the empty house feel like a trap waiting to snap shut. Martin arrived first, moving with careful steps that betrayed both nerves and determination. He told himself he had a good reason to be there, even if he could not quite articulate it in words that would sound convincing to anyone else. He was searching for answers tied to Drew's past, and to decisions that could affect more people than Drew realized. Martin had barely crossed the threshold when another presence shifted behind him. Tracy entered just as silently, with a completely different objective burning in her mind. She was not looking for the same answers Martin was, and she had no intention of sharing her motives with anyone. Tracy believed Drew was hiding something dangerous, and she trusted her instincts enough to break into his home to prove it. When she rounded the corner and nearly collided with Martin, both of them froze in disbelief. They stared at each other for a long breath, neither willing to speak first. The absurdity of the situation almost made Tracy laugh, but the tension in Martin's face stopped her. Each of them demanded an explanation, and neither offered a satisfying one. Their surprise deepened when they noticed signs that suggested someone else might already be inside or had just left. Drawers were disturbed in a way neither of them had touched, and a faint sound upstairs hinted at movement. The realization hit them at the same time that they were not alone in their recklessness. Lulu's name surfaced in both of their minds. She had reasons of her own to confront Drew, especially with everything unraveling around her family. The open door seemed to point directly to her. Or perhaps someone else entirely had slipped in under cover of concern or curiosity. Whoever it was left Martin and Tracy scrambling to justify their presence if they were caught, which only added to the pressure building in the room. While suspicion brewed in Drew's empty house, another unlikely connection was strengthening elsewhere. Valentine sat in Carly's living room, trying to process the news that Charlotte had been found. Relief washed over him in waves, but it was tangled with guilt, fear, and gratitude. Carly had been the one to deliver the information, and the weight of that kindness surprised him. She had every reason to keep her distance, yet she chose to step in and help. Their conversations grew more personal as the night went on. Valentine opened up about the fear that had driven him to the edge, and Carly listened in a way few people ever did. She had managed to stop him from making a dangerous move earlier, and now she realized just how close he had come to crossing a line he could not return from. The bond forming between them was built on shared secrets and mutual understanding rather than romance, but it was powerful all the same. That fragile sense of safety shattered when the possibility of someone arriving unexpectedly at Carly's house became very real. Valentine knew he could not be discovered hiding in her attic any longer. Staying put would put both of them at risk. With Charlotte found but still vulnerable, Valentine understood that he needed a new place to disappear until he could figure out his next move. Leaving Carly's protection was not easy, but it was necessary, and the timing could not have been worse. Elsewhere, Sonny was following a trail that led him straight toward a long-buried secret. His instincts told him someone important had vanished, and that the truth was being hidden behind layers of misdirection. Each clue drew him closer to the castle, where Anna had been held against her will. Sonny moved carefully, knowing that entering the castle without being seen required precision and luck. If he was right and Anna was there, then everything would change. The thought of Anna being imprisoned fueled Sonny's resolve. He had already risked enough to get this far, and turning back was not an option. The deeper he went, the more convinced he became that he was not the only one moving through the shadows. Someone else was inside the castle that night, and their intentions were far from clear. Jason was dealing with his own storm of unanswered questions. Britt's sudden decision to end their relationship had left him reeling. He replayed every recent interaction, searching for signs he might have missed. Britt was hiding something that much was obvious to him now. Her behavior was not about him alone, but about a danger she did not want to share. Unable to let it go, Jason began quietly watching Britt from a distance. What he discovered unsettled him more than he expected. Britt was under threat, and the pressure was closing in. Whoever was targeting her knew how to stay hidden and how to strike without warning. Jason realized that Britt had pushed him away to protect him from the fallout of her secret. That knowledge only made him more determined to stay close even if she never knew it. The tension reached another level when Sidwell entered the picture. His presence at the castle was no coincidence, and his timing was ruthless. The power outage created the perfect cover for a confrontation, and Sidwell took advantage of it. Someone had stepped into the castle at exactly the wrong moment, whether it was Jason Sonny Jocelyn or another player drawn by their own mission. Sidwell was ready to intercept them and ensure they did not walk away with answers. Back at the hospital, Maxie stirred after a long stretch of uncertainty. Her eyes fluttered open, and the relief that followed was immediate and overwhelming. Word spread quickly, and Nathan rushed to her side, unwilling to waste a second. His joy was complicated by nerves about what Maxie might remember, and how much had changed while she was unconscious. Nathan did not arrive alone. Lulu was with him, carrying her own mix of hope and anxiety. When Maxie saw them together, something shifted in her expression. There was surprise there, but also curiosity. As they spoke, it became clear that Nathan and Lulu had grown closer in unexpected ways. The possibility of a deeper relationship hung in the air, leaving Maxie with a lot to process, even as she focused on healing. Family tensions continued to simmer through Rocco and Charlotte. Charlotte did not hold back her criticism, especially after her failed attempt to secretly visit her biological father. Rocco stood his ground, insisting that he had done what he thought was right when he called Lulu about Charlotte's location. The argument exposed deeper fractures and fears neither of them wanted to admit. Charlotte carried her own secrets, including information she had received quietly from Carly. She knew Valentine had moved from his previous hiding place, but neither she nor Carly had any idea where he was now. That uncertainty gnawed at her. It made her feel powerless and angry at the same time. Her frustration spilled out onto Rocco, even though he was not the true source of her pain. At the hospital, Willow sat beside Drew's bed, watching his chest rise and fall. He had not woken yet, and the quiet gave her space to confront her own guilt. She leaned close and began to speak, believing no one else could hear. Her confession poured out in a rush as she admitted fears, mistakes, and truths she had buried deep. Willow did not know that someone nearby might be listening. Whether it was a visitor lingering too long or someone with their own reasons for eavesdropping, the risk was real. Those words, once spoken, could not be taken back, and if they reached the wrong ears, the consequences would be devastating. As night deepened, Brick moved through his own investigation, piecing together evidence that pointed toward a larger threat. What he found was significant enough that Sonny needed to see it immediately. Brick understood the danger of the situation and stayed close, ready to protect Sonny if things turned violent. All paths seemed to lead back to the castle, where darkness, confusion, and urgency collided. Brick's presence there was no accident, and his instincts told him trouble was moments away. The same was true for everyone else drawn into the web of secrets, betrayals, and desperate choices. The night refused to slow down. Each revelation raised new questions, and every decision carried weight. The castle stood as a silent witness to intersecting destinies, while elsewhere Drew's house, hospital rooms, and hidden corners of Port Charles held their own ticking time bombs. Nothing was resolved, and no one was truly safe as the story surged forward toward an inevitable reckoning. The darkness inside the castle did not lift when the generators failed to kick back on. Instead, it seemed to thicken, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sonny moved cautiously along the corridor, his instincts sharpened by years of surviving moments like this. Every step echoed too loudly in his ear. He knew he was close now, close to the truth, and possibly close to Anna. A faint sound guided him toward a locked door at the end of the hall. He tested it gently, then forced it open, just enough to slip inside. The room was cold and sparsely lit by moonlight filtering through narrow windows. At first he saw nothing. Then a figure stirred in the corner, and his heart clenched when he recognized Anna. She was weak but alive, and that was all that mattered. Their reunion was quiet but intense. Anna struggled to her feet, fighting exhaustion and disbelief. Sonny told her there was no time to explain everything yet. They had to move before whoever was holding her realized what was happening. As they prepared to leave, a noise outside the door froze them both. Someone else was nearby and moving fast. At the same time, Jason found himself on the opposite side of the castle, guided by information he had pieced together from following Britt. He had tracked a threat here without fully understanding how many others were converging on the same location. When he turned a corner, suddenly the lights flickered briefly, revealing Sidwell standing in front of him, blocking his path. The confrontation was immediate and dangerous. Sidwell had anticipated interference and was ready for it. Words were exchanged, but neither man truly wanted to talk. In the half-light, Jason saw the intent in Sidwell's eyes and knew this would not end cleanly. Their struggle spilled into the hallway, knocking over furniture and drawing attention neither of them wanted. The noise carried through the castle and reached Sonny just as he helped Anna into the corridor. Sonny recognized Jason's voice instantly. That realization changed everything. He moved toward the sound, knowing that whatever Sidwell was planning needed to be stopped now. Brick emerged from the shadows moments later, positioning himself without hesitation to protect Sonny. The clash that followed was chaotic and raw. Sidwell realized too late that he was outnumbered and outmatched. The power flickered again, briefly illuminating faces filled with determination and fury. Jason and Sonny worked together with practiced instinct while Brick covered their blind spots. Sidwell was subdued, but not before he revealed enough to confirm that Britt had been targeted as leverage in a much larger plan. With Sidwell restrained, Sonny made a quick decision. Anna needed medical attention immediately. Jason volunteered to escort her out through a safer route while Brick handled the aftermath. There was no time for long discussions or explanations. Each of them knew their role and moved without hesitation. Outside the castle, the night air felt almost unreal after the suffocating darkness inside. Anna leaned heavily on Jason, but she managed a small, grateful smile. She knew this rescue would have consequences, but survival came first. An unmarked car waited nearby, arranged by Brick as a contingency. Once Anna was safely inside, Jason paused only a moment before heading back toward town, his thoughts already shifting to Britt. Back in Port Charles, Drew's house was no longer quiet. Tracy and Martin were forced out of hiding when a third presence finally revealed itself. Lulu stepped into the room, her expression a mix of shock, anger, and resolve. She demanded to know what they were doing there. The explanations that followed were messy, incomplete, and barely believable. Lulu admitted she had come looking for answers of her own. She had suspected Drew was connected to more than he admitted, especially after learning bits and pieces from Rocco and Maxie. Hearing Tracy and Martin's motives only confirmed that something significant was being hidden. The three of them reluctantly agreed to leave before they were discovered, but the alliance felt temporary at best. At the hospital, Drew finally began to stir just as Willow finished her confession. Her words hung in the air, heavy with truth and regret. Drew's eyes opened slowly, and he looked at her with confusion and concern. He had heard enough to understand that Willow was carrying a burden alone. Before she could say more, a nurse entered, breaking the moment and giving Willow time to steady herself. Later, when they were alone, Drew asked her gently to repeat what she had said. Willow did not hold back this time. She told him everything, trusting that honesty was the only way forward. Drew listened without interrupting, absorbing the weight of her truth. It was painful, but it was real, and for the first time there was a sense that whatever came next would be faced together. Across town, Valentine prepared to leave Carly's house, knowing that staying any longer would endanger them both. Their goodbye was understated but meaningful. Carly reminded him that Charlotte needed him alive and present, even if from a distance. Valentine promised he would be careful and disappeared into the night, determined to find a new refuge and a safer path back to his daughter. Charlotte herself sat awake, wrestling with conflicting emotions. Learning that Valentine had moved again without telling her hurt more than she expected. She lashed out at Rocco once more before finally admitting she was scared. Rocco responded not with anger, but with quiet reassurance. In that moment the tension between them softened, replaced by a shared understanding that their family was fractured, but not beyond repair. At the hospital, Maxie continued to recover, surrounded by cautious optimism. Nathan stayed close while Lulu hovered nearby, still processing her own emotions. The possibility of romance between Nathan and Lulu was acknowledged but not rushed. Maxie surprised them both by offering her blessing in a way that was both sincere and emotional. It was a turning point that allowed all three of them to breathe a little easier. Jason found Britt just in time. She was shaken and on edge, having narrowly avoided the danger Sidwell had set in motion. When Jason told her what had happened at the castle and what he had learned, Britt finally broke down and admitted the truth. She had been threatened and believed distancing herself was the only way to protect him. Jason pulled her into a quiet embrace, assuring her she did not have to face anything alone anymore. The relief on Britt's face was unmistakable. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe enough to stop running. As dawn approached, Port Charles began to stir, unaware of how close everything had come to unraveling completely. Sonny visited Anna later that morning, grateful and shaken but resolute. Britt delivered the evidence he had gathered, confirming that the immediate threat had been neutralized, though the larger implications would take time to address. Tracy and Martin parted ways, each having learned something they had not expected. Tracy realized that her instincts were still sharp, but that acting alone carried risks she could no longer ignore. Martin accepted that his search for truth often led him into dangerous territory, but he was not ready to stop. In Drew's hospital room, Willow rested her head against his shoulder, exhausted, but lighter than she had been in a long time. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be honest. As the sun rose over the city, the castle stood quiet, once more, its secrets temporarily exposed, but not entirely erased. Lives had intersected, choices had been made, and relationships had shifted. Port Charles carried on, changed in subtle but lasting ways as the echoes of that night settled into memory, leaving behind the promise that even in darkness there was still a way forward.